You know, in Arabic, it's often the smallest words that pack the biggest punch. We're talking about these tiny little particles that can grab a verb and just completely flip its mood, its tense, and its entire meaning. These are the powerful mood changers of the language, and they're known as the Jawazim.
So, that's the big question, right? How on earth can one tiny word, just by sitting in front of a verb, have the power to shift its meaning from the present all the way into the past? I mean, it sounds almost like a grammatical magic trick, and today we're going to pull back the curtain and see exactly how it's done.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll cover the basics. What exactly are these jazm? Then, we'll jump into the two main types, the ones that modify a single verb and the ones that link two verbs together. After that, we'll see them in action in the Quran, which is just beautiful. Before we pull it all together into a toolkit you can start using right away.
All right, first things first. What in the world are we talking about when we say jazm? Let's get a really clear definition down.
Okay, the best way to think about the jazm is as grammatical triggers. When one of these little guys shows up before a present tense verb, it forces that verb into a special state called the jussive case. Now, jussive is basically a mood for commands or prohibitions or consequences. So this isn't just some tiny little spelling change. It fundamentally alters what the verb is doing in the sentence.
Now, the good news here is that we can break all of these powerful particles down into just two main categories. And it all boils down to one simple question. Do they affect one verb or do they affect two?
So on one side, you've got particles that just deal with a single verb. Pretty straightforward. But on the other side, you've got particles that create a kind of chain reaction, linking two different verbs together in a cause and effect relationship. Let's start with the first type, the single verb modifiers. So let's dive right into that first category. We're going to look at four very specific particles, and each one has its own unique way of changing the meaning of a single verb. First up, we have lam. This particle is a seriously powerful negator. It basically says no, but it does it with a really cool twist. It takes a verb that looks like it's in the present tense and forces its meaning into the past. Just look at what happens here. The verb yadhabu, which means he goes, becomes lam yadhab, he did not go. But look closer. See how the end of the verb changes? It loses that final vowel and gets a sukun, that little circle indicating silence. That right there is the jussive case in action, changing the word right before your eyes. Next up is lama. Now, think of this one as a cousin to lam, but it carries this built-in sense of anticipation. It means something hasn't happened yet, but everyone's kind of expecting that it will. And here, we see another classic sign of the jussive case. The original verb for they taste, yadukuna, ends with that letter noon. But as soon as lemma comes along, that noon just gets dropped. It disappears. And we're left with lemma yaduku, they have not yet tasted. Okay, our last two in this group are basically two sides of the same coin. You've got lam al-amr, which is the particle of command. It's how you say something should or must be done. And then you have its opposite, la an-nahya, the particle of prohibition. That's your do not. One gives an order, the other forbids an action. Simple as that.
All right, let's level up and look at our second category. These particles are even more interesting. Instead of just tweaking one verb, they act like a bridge, connecting two verbs to create a logical if-then kind of statement.
And the logic behind this is actually really straightforward. The star player here is the particle in, which just means if. It sets up a condition, the if you do X part of the sentence. And that is always followed by a result, the then Y will happen part. Now, here's the key. The particle in forces both of those verbs into the jussive case.
So take a look at this sentence. In tajtahid tanja. In creates the link. The condition, tajtahid, you work hard, and the result, tanja, you will succeed, are both marked as jussive. It's like the grammar itself is creating an unbreakable link between the effort and the reward. Okay, we've got the theory down. Now for the really cool part. Let's see how spotting these particles in the Quran can unlock a whole new layer of meaning and grammatical elegance.
Our first example is from Surah Muhammad, and it features that powerful two-verb modifier we were just talking about, the conditional in.
So let's really unpack this. The particle in kicks off the condition tansiru, meaning if you help. And what's the result? Yansurukum, he will help you. And notice the first verb, tansiru. It has dropped its final noon, which is that classic sign of the jussive case. By linking these two verbs, the verse forges an absolute,
unbreakable conditional promise.
For our second example, let's look at a famous verse from Surah Ash-Sharh. This time, we're going to see the one-verb modifier lam at work. Here, the key particle is lam, and we know that one negates in the past tense. So the verb nashrah, we expand, becomes jussive. Lam nashrah means we did not expand. But when you add that question particle, the alif, right at the start, it transforms the entire phrase into this incredibly beautiful and powerful rhetorical question. Have we not expanded?
All right, that was a lot. So let's pull everything we've talked about together into a quick reference toolkit. This will help make sure all these concepts really stick. This table is basically your cheat sheet. Remember, we've got two main categories. First, the single verb modifiers, lam and lama for negation, and li and la for commands and prohibitions. And then you have the big one, the connector in, which creates that awesome if-then structure by linking a condition directly to its result. So, from now on, when you're reading Arabic, keep your eyes peeled for these little particles. They might be small, but their impact is absolutely huge. The real question is, now that you know how to spot these mood changers, what new layers of meaning and precision are you going to uncover in your own reading?